The alien jungle stretched endlessly, thick with twisted trees and glowing fungi that pulsed softly in the darkness. The air was heavy, humid, and alive with the sounds of unseen creatures moving in the shadows. Every step she took made the ground squelch beneath her claws, and every rustle in the underbrush sent a shiver down her spine. Her heart pounded in her chest as she crept forward, senses on high alert. The mission had been simple at first: explore the uncharted region, record the ecosystem, and return. But now, alone in this alien wilderness, she realized how unprepared she truly was. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward her, every distant growl sounded like it was just behind her, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She stopped suddenly, ears twitching, and her eyes scanned the darkness. Something moved, large, fast, too fast for her to make out clearly. Her instincts screamed for her to run, to hide, to find safety, but the dense jungle offered no refuge. Her breathing became shallow, and her claws flexed nervously as she considered her options. She had faced dangerous creatures before, creatures that could rip through metal and bone alike. But there was a difference between facing danger in controlled environments and stepping into a living nightmare that seemed to breathe with intent. The sound came again, closer this time, a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the ground. Her muscles tensed, and her tail swished in agitation. She raised her weapon, trembling, ready to strike if the creature dared to attack. Every instinct in her body screamed danger. Every survival protocol screamed retreat. Yet she could not tear her eyes away from the shadow that moved between the trees. It was massive, impossibly large, with glowing eyes that pierced the dim light. Her mind raced. She knew this was no ordinary predator. It was something far more intelligent, far more dangerous. Her mind screamed that death was inevitable if she stayed, yet she could not move. Fear rooted her to the spot, a heavy weight that pressed down on her chest. Then, as if stepping out of nowhere, he appeared. A human, calm, relaxed, with a slight smile on his face that seemed almost impossibly serene given the danger looming nearby. He walked slowly, deliberately, his gaze fixed not on her, but on the massive shadow that had her paralyzed. She blinked, unsure if she was dreaming or hallucinating from fear. The human stopped a few paces away from her, standing between her and the beast as though it were nothing more than a stray animal in the woods. "It's Harmless," he said quietly, his voice calm, confident, almost soothing in the chaos of her terror. She wanted to scream, to argue, to tell him he had no idea what he was doing, but the words stuck in her throat. The beast stopped moving for a moment, its glowing eyes narrowing as it considered this strange new figure standing fearlessly in its path. Time seemed to slow. She could hear the rustling of leaves, the snap of distant branches, the faint hiss of the jungle breathing. The human didn't flinch, didn't raise a weapon, didn't even tense. He simply stood there, smiling faintly, and something in the way he carried himself, the calm certainty in his posture, made her doubt everything she thought she knew about humans. Her pulse raced faster, a mix of fear, disbelief, and curiosity battling within her. The shadow shifted, muscles rippling, claws scraping against stone-like roots, but it made no move to attack. It circled the human once, twice, its massive head, lowering, nostrils flaring, assessing him, sniffing him, testing him in ways she could not comprehend. The human tilted his head slightly, almost like he was studying it in return. And then, to her utter disbelief, he reached out a hand. The creature froze. Its growl faded, replaced by a low, almost purring sound that vibrated through the ground. Her mind spun. What kind of human was this? What kind of power, what kind of presence could stop a beast that could tear her apart in seconds? She felt a strange mixture of fear and awe, fear of what the human might be capable of, and awe at his courage, his control, the way he seemed untouchable, even in the face of imminent death. Her muscles slowly unclenched, though her claws remained ready, still expecting a sudden lunge that never came. She wanted to move, to speak, to ask questions, but the words caught in her throat. The human finally turned to her, his smile widening slightly, as if he knew the exact thoughts racing through her mind. "See," he said, almost casually. "It won't hurt you." She stared, unable to speak, watching as the beast bowed. Massive head slightly before retreating back into the shadows of the jungle, disappearing as silently as it had appeared. Her heart continued to race, her mind refusing to process what she had just witnessed. The human stepped closer, eyes calm and unwavering, and extended his hand to her. Hesitantly, trembling, she took it, feeling a warmth and confidence that seemed completely alien in this dangerous, hostile world. "You're safe," he said simply, and for the first time since entering the jungle, she believed him, though a small voice in the back of her mind warned her that this was only the beginning. The jungle was alive, the shadows were thick, and the human was something entirely unlike anything she had ever known. Yeah, something dangerous, something powerful, and yet undeniably human. As she followed him deeper into the darkness, the forest seemed to part slightly, as if acknowledging his presence. Every step she took was hesitant, every sound amplified in her ears, and every shadow felt like it might conceal another threat.
Oh.
But she also felt a strange sense of hope, a curiosity she could not suppress. She wanted to understand him, to understand why he was so different, so fearless, and so terrifying all at once. Somewhere deep in the jungle, a pair of glowing eyes watched them, not the beast they had seen, but something else entirely, something older, smarter, waiting, observing. And as the night pressed in around them, she realized that the real danger might not be the creatures of the jungle, but the mysteries that followed this human wherever he went. The forest had grown darker, thicker, as if it resented their presence. Every step the human took seemed deliberate, measured as though he knew exactly where danger lurked. Her senses straining. To catch the slightest movement, the air vibrated with tension, the calls of distant creatures echoing like warnings through the twisted canopy. Then it appeared. The beast from earlier stepped out of the shadows, its massive form towering over the alien trees. Muscles rippled under its armored skin, eyes glowing like molten gold, teeth sharp and jagged enough to crush bone with ease. Its roar shattered the calm night, a deep, resonating sound that made the ground tremble and her heart pound in her chest. She raised her weapon instinctively, ready to fire, but the human didn't move. He stood calmly, almost relaxed, a faint smile playing across his face, and she wondered if he was mad or simply fearless. The beast advanced, each step shaking the ground, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air around him. Her instincts screamed that it would attack, that it would tear them apart, that death was inevitable. Yet the human's eyes never wavered. Slowly, deliberately, he crouched and reached into his pack. She expected him to pull a weapon, a trap, anything but instead. He drew a small piece of meat, holding it out with open hands. The beast paused mid-step, head tilting, sniffing cautiously. It growled, low and menacing, muscles tensed, but it didn't strike. The alien couldn't believe her eyes. The human stepped forward another pace, keeping his hand steady, his movements smooth and calm. The beast's growl softened, a deep rumble vibrating through the jungle. He held its gaze, unblinking, unshaken, until the massive creature took the meat from his hand with surprising gentleness. Chewing slowly, eyes still locked on him as if judging every action, she took a step back, heart racing, unable to tear. Her eyes away. She had seen creatures tamed before, trained to follow commands, but never had she witnessed anything like this. The human didn't use chains, weapons, or even fear. He simply stood there, and the beast obeyed. It was a terrifying display, yet mesmerizing in its calmness. The alien realized that the human was not just brave, he commanded a presence that demanded respect. A presence that could bend even the most violent of creatures without a single threat. Her mind spun with questions. How was this possible? What kind of human was this? The jungle itself seemed to acknowledge him, shadows parting slightly as if to give him space, strange noises fading in his presence. The beast, now pacified, nuzzled the human's hand, before retreating back into the dense foliage, disappearing almost silently. The alien's pulse finally slowed, though her hands still trembled. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask the countless questions crowding her mind, but the human's calm gaze met hers, and she found herself frozen. "Most creatures respond to fear," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the lingering tension like a blade. "But fear doesn't work on everything. Some things need trust, some things need respect, and some just need you to be human." His words were simple, yet carried weight she could not yet understand. She nodded slowly, her mind still reeling. The forest around them seemed alive, every rustle, every whisper, every distant cry filled with meaning she couldn't decode. The human led the way deeper into the jungle, and she followed, unable to resist the pull of curiosity and the strange sense of safety his presence gave her. As they moved, strange symbols appeared carved into the bark of enormous trees, glowing faintly in patterns that pulsed like living veins. Her eyes widened. "What? What is this place?" she asked, voice trembling. The human glanced at her, one eyebrow raised, but did not answer immediately. He walked toward the symbols, running his fingers lightly across them. "This jungle has its own rules," he said finally. "Some are obvious, some you have to feel, you have to understand it." She frowned, confusion and frustration mingling with awe. She had been trained to survive in hostile environments, taught to read signs of danger, to predict predator behavior, to plan for every contingency, but nothing had prepared her for this. Nothing could explain the calm certainty of this human, the way he moved through danger as if it were nothing. The night deepened, the glowing fungi illuminating the forest floor in a soft, eerie light. She noticed the faint outlines of massive roots twisting through the ground like living serpents, shadows of unseen creatures slithering in the corners of her vision. Every step she took felt dangerous, every breath heavy with the unknown, and yet she couldn't bring herself to stop. She wanted to understand the human, to comprehend how one being could command fear, awe, and mystery all at once. And then she heard a low, almost melodic rumble coming from somewhere deep in the jungle. The sound was not the beast, not the creatures she had encountered so far, but something older, larger, more intelligent. The human stopped, listening intently. "We're not alone," he said simply, his voice calm but firm. Her heart leaped into her throat. What is it? What is it?" she whispered. He smiled faintly, the same unnerving calm that had held through every danger so far. "Something that's been waiting. Something that knows we're here." A shiver ran down her spine. She wanted to run, to hide, to turn back, but the human didn't move. He took a slow, deliberate step forward, eyes scanning the darkness, muscles relaxed yet ready, and she realized that he had no fear. None at all. And in that moment, she understood something she had never realized before. This human was not just fearless. He was extraordinary. The jungle seemed to hold its breath as they moved deeper into the shadows, every sound amplified, every movement tense, every shadow a potential threat. Yet, despite the danger, she felt herself drawn forward, compelled by curiosity, by awe, and by a strange sense of trust she could not explain. The night closed around them, the jungle alive with unseen eyes and whispered threats. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty: the real journey was just beginning. And the human at her side was far more dangerous, far more powerful, and far more mysterious than she had ever imagined. The jungle seemed to shift as they moved deeper, the air growing thicker, almost alive, carrying whispers of unseen creatures and strange, vibrating hums that made the alien's skin crawl. She had thought the night could not become more unnerving. But with every step, it felt as if the darkness itself was testing her, probing for weakness. The human walked ahead, calm, steady, his eyes scanning the dense shadows with a quiet certainty that both fascinated and terrified her. Every now and then he would pause, bend down, touch the ground, or the plants, or the faint carvings in the trees, as if communicating silently with the forest. Wanted to ask him what he was doing, how he knew what the forest wanted. But she felt a strange hesitation, as if the words would break something delicate in the air. The silence between them was heavy. filled only by the distant cries of creatures she had never seen and could barely imagine. Then, without warning, a low growl echoed from above. She looked up just in time to see enormous shapes leaping from the tree branches, creatures with sinewy bodies, claws that could tear through metal, and eyes that glowed with predatory hunger. Her body froze. Instinct screamed that they were doomed, that there was no way to survive such an attack. The human, however, did not flinch. He barely moved a muscle, standing with his feet planted firmly, his gaze unwavering. In awe, as the creatures circled him, testing him, waiting for a sign of fear, and still there was nothing. He raised a hand, almost casually, and the creatures halted midair, their glowing eyes locked on him. Time seemed to stretch. The alien felt her pulse hammering in her ears. She had seen animals respond to dominance, prey to predator, but this was something entirely different. The human radiated control, a presence that bent even the most dangerous creatures to his will. Mind spun with questions. How could one being, one fragile human, command such raw power without weapons, without chains, without aggression? The creatures tilted their heads, observing him, assessing, calculating. Then slowly they retreated, slipping back into the shadows, leaving him unharmed, untouched. She could not breathe. Her tail twitched nervously, her claws flexing involuntarily. He glanced back at her, expression calm, almost amused. "See?" he said quietly. "Fear is contagious, but so is calm. You choose which spreads." She swallowed hard, still trying to comprehend what she had just witnessed. Now her species prided itself on strength, cunning, and adaptability. Yet, this human seemed to operate on a level beyond instinct, beyond skill. There was something extraordinary about him, something she could neither define nor challenge. She wanted to understand him, to know why he could do what no other being could. Yet she felt a flicker of fear at the thought of the answer. They continued through the forest, moving toward a faint glow that pulsed between the trees. The human didn't speak much, only occasionally offering a word of guidance or a subtle gesture. Yet every action carried weight. The alien found herself watching him constantly, trying to anticipate his movements, trying to learn what he knew instinctively. Finally, they reached a clearing where the ground was covered in strange, luminescent patterns, forming intricate symbols that pulsed like veins beneath the jungle's surface. Her eyes widened. "What is this place?" she asked, voice trembling with curiosity and caution. The human knelt, tracing the patterns with a finger. "This jungle has memories," he said softly. "It remembers who has passed, who has taken, who has survived. Some places record it more clearly than others. You just have to know how to read it." She stared at him, trying to process his words. She had studied countless alien ecosystems, had mapped and cataloged hundreds of worlds, yet she had never encountered a jungle that seemed sentient, that seemed aware of the beings moving through it. And yet he moved as if he belonged, as if the jungle itself bent to his understanding. Her head spun with disbelief and awe. "And you, It," she whispered. He looked at her with a faint smile. "Not everything," he admitted, "but enough. Enough to survive, enough to guide others." As they moved forward, the glow intensified, revealing enormous stone structures partially hidden by vines and moss. She could feel the weight of history in the air, an ancient presence that radiated both danger and mystery. Her instincts screamed that they were not alone. The human noticed her hesitation and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay close," he said simply, and she realized that for the first time, she trusted someone completely, despite knowing so little about them. Suddenly a sound shattered the relative deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through the ground. Trees shook, and distant roars echoed like a chorus of warnings. The alien froze, heart pounding, as shapes moved in the darkness, larger and more menacing than anything she had ever seen. The human didn't flinch. He crouched slightly, scanning, assessing, calculating. "We are being watched," he said quietly. "And not just by animals." Her mind raced. She had thought the beasts were the greatest threat, but she realized, now that the real danger was something else entirely, something intelligent, something aware, and yet she could not look away from the calm, steady presence of the human beside her. In the face of unknown horrors, he remained unshaken, unbroken, almost untouchable.
Ash.
She had no idea what lay ahead, no idea what force was waiting for them in the jungle's depths, yet she felt a strange certainty that they would survive. But she also knew, deep in the pit of her stomach, that this human's calm was not just strength, it was a sign that they were about to encounter something far bigger, far older, and far more dangerous than anything she had faced before. As they advanced, the shadows seemed to grow longer, the glow of the forest more intense, and a pair of eyes watched from the distance, blinking, intelligent, and filled with an ancient hunger. The journey was only beginning, and the alien realized with a mix of fear and awe that the human beside her was not just extraordinary, he was something the galaxy had never seen before. The jungle had grown darker, almost suffocating, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made her flinch, muscles taut and ready for anything. The human moved ahead, calm and deliberate, as though he had walked through these shadows countless times before. She tried to mimic his composure, but her pulse raced uncontrollably, her tail flicking nervously with each step. Suddenly, a low, vibrating growl rolled through the ground beneath them, reverberating in her chest like a warning drum. She froze, heart hammering, ears straining to catch the source. Then they appeared, dozens of creatures bursting from the shadows, leaping from tree branches, crawling out of hidden pits, and slithering from behind massive roots. They were unlike any predators she had ever seen. Scales shimmered in unnatural colors, claws as long as her arms, teeth glinting with a metallic sheen. Their eyes glowed like molten fire, fixed entirely on the human ahead. Her instincts screamed to run, to hide, to flee, but the human didn't even flinch. He paused, letting the creatures circle him, their movements calculated, deliberate, like a coordinated hunting pack. His calmness was unnerving, almost impossible, and it froze her, where she stood. She watched as the creatures tested him, darting in and out, snapping and screeching, muscles tensing to attack, but he remained perfectly still. His eyes scanned, analyzing, calculating, predicting every possible move before it happened. She realized with growing awe that he wasn't just brave, he was something beyond natural. The creatures lunged, claws slashing through the humid air, jaws snapping inches from him, and yet he moved with a precision that defied comprehension. A simple step to the left, a shift of weight, and the creatures misjudged, crashing into trees, or one another. He didn't strike them. He didn't need to. Every movement, every pause, every glance controlled the chaos around him. She wanted to scream, to warn him, to do something. Anything but she was powerless to intervene, completely captivated by the display of calm, calculated mastery. Slowly he raised a hand, palm open, and the creatures froze mid-motion. They paused, heads cocked, as if listening to something only he could convey. She blinked, unable to believe her eyes. He was not commanding with words or weapons, yet every one of them obeyed him, waiting, testing, but not attacking. Her jaw dropped. For a moment, the forest seemed to fall silent. Even the glowing fungi dimmed as if in respect. Then without warning, the creatures scattered, retreating back into the darkness, leaving him unscathed, untouched by the very forces she had expected to rip him apart. She could barely breathe, her body trembling with a mix of fear, awe, and disbelief. She realized painfully that she had been trained to survive danger, to outsmart predators, to anticipate attacks, but this human operated on a level beyond. All her preparation, his presence alone reshaped the threats around him. She swallowed hard, trying to regain composure, and finally whispered, "How? How are you doing this?" He turned to her, his face calm, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Understanding the jungle isn't about fear," he said simply. It's about knowing what can and cannot hurt you. Everything else is just noise. She stared at him, mind spinning, trying to grasp the concept. She had always believed intelligence, weapons, and strength were the keys to survival. But he had just shown her something entirely different, something that transcended those limits. The rumble of distant movement grew louder. She glanced toward the shadows and noticed strange, flickering lights moving in the distance. The forest itself seemed alive, almost sentient, pulsing with an energy she could feel vibrating in the air. She realized, with a creeping chill, that the human wasn't just surviving the jungle, he was navigating it as if he were part of it, understanding it in ways she could not. Her mind reeled with questions. How had humanity evolved to this? How could one being, so seemingly fragile, exert such control over forces she thought were uncontrollable? She felt a mixture of fear, admiration, something she couldn't name. It's an instinctive certainty that whatever lay ahead would test them both in ways she could not predict. The human gestured for her to follow, leading her toward the glowing lights. As they approached, the shapes became clear, massive, semi-organic structures rising from the ground, covered in glowing patterns, moving subtly as if breathing. The alien's eyes widened. She had expected danger, but not this an entire ecosystem of life forms, aware, reactive, and somehow intelligent. "This is alive," she whispered, awe and fear lacing her voice. "More alive than anything I've ever seen." He nodded, eyes scanning the structures. "It is. And it's been watching us," he said quietly. "Everything in this jungle has its purpose, and it knows when intruders are near. Now that's why it tested us." Her pulse quickened. She realized that the true danger of this jungle was not just the predators she could see, but the intelligence behind every movement. The awareness, the unseen eyes that judged and calculated, deciding if she and this human were worth attacking or letting pass. And yet, despite the looming threat, the human moved forward with certainty, calm, unshaken. She felt herself drawn to him, compelled to trust him, even when every instinct screamed not to. The jungle closed around them, shadows twisting, strange hums vibrating through the ground, unseen forces shifting. And she realized that the human at her side was not just extraordinary, he was something the galaxy had never witnessed before. Something terrifying, something powerful, something human. The forest seemed to close in around them, thick vines twisting like serpents and shadows stretching unnaturally long, each movement hinting at unseen predators. The alien's pulse raced, her claws flexing as every rustle in the underbrush made her flinch, yet she couldn't look away from the human. He moved with a confidence and grace that defied logic, each step measured, almost casual, yet brimming with purpose. Suddenly, the creatures that had been lurking in the shadows launched their attack. A coordinated surge of claws, teeth, and scales that lunged with lethal precision. Her instinct screamed at her to flee, to run, to find safety. But the human didn't move backward. Instead, he shifted his weight, his feet landing with exact precision, and in that single motion, every predator misjudged their strike, colliding into one another, or crashing into the massive roots that dotted the forest floor. She gasped, unable to believe what she was witnessing. The human didn't wield weapons in the way she knew. There were no blasters, no energy shields, no traps. Every motion, every glance, every slight movement seemed to control the battlefield itself. The creatures attacked again, snapping and slashing, but he anticipated each strike with uncanny foresight. A swift sidestep, a slight pivot, and another predator fell, miscalculating its speed or angle. He moved like the jungle itself had become an extension of his body, every step precise, every pause intentional. The alien's heart pounded in her chest as she realized that she was witnessing not only courage, but something beyond humana, natural instinct honed into perfection, a presence that commanded the living world around him. She tried to help, throwing herself into the fray, but even her trained reflexes paled in comparison. Every attempt she made seemed almost unnecessary. He anticipated every threat, covering every angle, saving them both without breaking a sweat. The jungle echoed with the clash of claws against roots and scales scraping against bark, yet through it all, he remained calm, calculating, in full control. Then one massive predator lunged from above, jaws open, claws extended, and she froze, certain it would strike him down.
Ow, but he did.
With a slight step to the side, he shifted his weight, and the creature missed completely, crashing into the ground with a thunderous impact. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, a faint smile curved his lips. "Stay close," he said, voice calm, almost teasing, as if he had anticipated her fear and her awe in equal measure. She swallowed, hard, barely managing to nod, understanding that her survival depended entirely on following his lead. The battle intensified, shadows dancing as creatures attacked from all directions. Yet with every strike, every calculated move, he dominated the fight without raising his voice or weapons. The alien could only watch, her mind struggling to comprehend the raw mastery in front of her. And then, as the last of the creatures retreated into the shadows, defeated not by force, but by the human's calm and control, she realized something profound. She had always believed survival depended on strength, speed, and cunning. Yet here was a being who rewrote all rules with presence alone, with instinct and understanding that transcended brute power. Her respect deepened, mingled with a touch of fear. This human was more than she could have imagined. He stood among the remnants of the skirmish, breathing easily, muscles relaxed, as if nothing had happened. She could hardly believe it had been a battle at all. He turned to her, calm eyes meeting hers, and said simply, "You're learning. That's good." She wanted to ask him what he meant, but words failed her. She realized slowly that she was not just learning survival in the jungle. She was learning what it meant to witness humanity at its most extraordinary. Her mind spun as they moved forward, deeper into the unknown. The jungle had tested them, revealed its secrets, and yet it had also revealed him, the human who could command life and death with presence alone. She could feel the pulsing energy of the forest, aware of their passage, sensing them as they approached a massive stone structure, partially covered in vines and glowing symbols. Her heart raced at the sight. This structure radiated power, ancient and undeniable. The human approached it cautiously, scanning every movement, every shadow, and she realized that even he was wary. "This place," he said quietly, "is older than any of us, older than the jungle, remembers everything." Her eyes widened. "Remembers?" she asked, barely breathing. He nodded, brushing his hand across the carved symbols. "Every predator, every threat, every life it has touched, it learns, adapts, and now it's watching us." Shiver ran down her spine. She had faced predators, beasts, and hostile terrain, but nothing could compare to the awareness of this place. It was alive in ways she could not fully understand, and yet the human moved with confidence, navigating it as if he belonged there. Suddenly, the ground vibrated beneath them, and a low, resonating growl echoed through the structure.
All shapes
Moved within the shadows, larger than any beast they had faced, intelligent, deliberate, and dangerous. She froze, terror gripping her chest, but he placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Remember what you've learned," he said softly.
calm.
"Observe. Trust your instincts, but also trust me." She nodded, her fear mingling with an odd sense of hope. For the first time, she realized that the human's power was not just physical, it was strategic, instinctive, and terrifyingly precise. She had survived many battles, yet she understood in that moment that the real lessons were not in weapons or brute strength. They were in presence, awareness, and understanding the world at a deeper level. As the shadows shifted and the massive forms advanced toward them, she realized with awe and fear that they were not merely facing the jungle, they were facing the jungle's intelligence. And the human beside her was its equal in ways she could barely comprehend. And she knew with a certainty that left her both exhilarated and terrified, that the journey ahead would reveal truths about humanity, power, and survival that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. The jungle had never felt more alive. Shadows moved with intent, leaves rustled with whispered warnings, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with anticipation. The alien could feel it in her chest, a tension so thick it pressed against her lungs, a warning that something far older, far stronger than any creature they had encountered was near. The human walked ahead, calm, steady, unshaken, as though he could sense the danger and knew exactly how to navigate it. She followed, every muscle taut, every sense screaming alert, yet unable to look away from him. Then a deep rumble shook the ground, vibrating through her bones. The massive beast from earlier stepped into the clearing, its enormous form silhouetted against the glowing fungi, eyes blazing with a mixture of intelligence and raw power. She froze, expecting an attack, expecting death to come in a single, devastating strike. But the human didn't flinch. He stood tall, hands relaxed at his sides, gaze fixed steadily on the creature. His calmness was unsettling, almost impossible, yet magnetic, and she realized with a jolt that the beast's attention was entirely on him. It circled slowly, muscles rippling, nostrils flaring, eyes narrowing as if sizing him up, testing his strength and resolve. The alien wanted to shout, to warn him, to tell him to run, but her voice caught in her throat. Time seemed to slow. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears. Every breath became heavy with anticipation, and every shadow held the promise of disaster. Then the human smiled faintly, raising one hand slightly, not in threat, not in dominance, but in acknowledgement. The beast froze mid-step, a low rumble vibrating from its chest. And then, astonishingly, it lowered its massive head slightly, almost in a gesture of respect. The alien's jaw dropped. She had expected violence, chaos, death, but what she witnessed was something entirely different. The human had not tamed the beast with fear, weapons, or intimidation. He had commanded it with presence, with instinct, with a quiet authority that transcended species, strength, and logic. The air seemed to shift, charged with energy, as if the jungle itself was acknowledging the moment. The massive creature, which had inspired terror in her heart only moments ago, now stood calmly, its gaze locked on the human. Her mind reeled. She had spent her life studying predators, strategizing survival, yet nothing had prepared her for this. This human's power was beyond anything she could comprehend. And then, in a voice calm and unhurried, the human said, "It knows who's in charge." The alien's eyes widened, realization dawning. This was not merely dominance, it was recognition. The beast was aware, intelligent, capable of understanding the difference between fear and respect, and it had chosen. A shiver ran down her spine as she realized that humans, in their simplicity and unpredictability, held a force the galaxy had yet to understand. The jungle seemed to breathe around them, shadows shifting, unseen eyes watching, yet the human remained unshaken. He turned to her, calm and steady, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've seen only the surface," he said softly. "There's more to humanity than you can imagine."
Dad.
She swallowed hard, a mixture of fear, awe, and curiosity coursing through her. She had witnessed beasts, battles, and the jungle's secrets, yet this moment crystallized the truth she could not deny. Humans were extraordinary, not because of strength alone, not because of weapons, but because of instinct, presence, and an unyielding courage that commanded respect across species. As the beast retreated back into the shadows, bowing subtly before leaving, the alien realized she had been changed. The fear she had felt, the awe, the disbelief, were now mingled with understanding. Humanity was not merely another species to study or fear. It was a force, a mystery, a presence that could not be ignored. She looked at the human beside her, his calm eyes reflecting the glow of the jungle, and for the first time, she understood the depth of what she was witnessing. The human extended a hand toward her, guiding her forward as the forest seemed to shift around them, making a path where none had existed. "The journey isn't over," he said simply.
Yes.
This was only the beginning. Her pulse raced, not with fear, but with anticipation. She had survived the jungle, witnessed its dangers, and understood its intelligence, but now she realized that the real challenge lay in understanding him, in following humanity into the unknown, into realms of power and mystery far beyond anything her species had encountered. As they walked deeper into the glowing, pulsing heart of the jungle, she felt the weight of the forest's awareness pressing around them, the eyes of ancient creatures watching silently from the shadows. And yet, she felt no fear, only awe and a growing sense of trust. The human's presence had altered the rhythm of the world around them. The dangers that had seemed insurmountable moments ago now appeared manageable, predictable, navigable because of him. The jungle itself seemed to bend to his understanding, yielding just enough to allow them passage. Somewhere in the distance, a pair of glowing eyes watched, intelligent, calculating, aware. Yet even they seemed hesitant, respectful, in the presence of the human. The alien realized then, with a shiver of revelation, that humanity's true power lay not in destruction, not in conquest, but in its ability to inspire, to command, to alter perception and expectation across the galaxy. And in that moment, she understood the truth that would forever change her view of the universe. Humans were extraordinary. They were unpredictable. They were unstoppable. And the galaxy would never be the same again. As the night pressed in, around them, shadows shifting, creatures watching, the alien followed the human, her mind alive with possibilities, her heart filled with awe. The journey ahead promised danger, discovery, and revelation. But she knew one thing for certain: with him, she was witnessing the rise of something far greater than she had ever imagined, something that would shape the stars, something human.